start with 2 Timothy. 2 Timothy 2 and verse 15. This is how you learn the word, all right? 2 Timothy 2 and verse 15, it says, study to show thyself approved unto God. All right, so study the word and you will become approved in the eyes of God. All right, so it's not to show anyone else that you're approved unto God. It's to show yourself that you're approved to God. And it's not to prove yourself to any man or woman. It's to prove yourself to God. Study like you're trying to prove yourself to God. A workman that need not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. And if you divide the word of truth rightly, then you will not be ashamed before God. When you are called to his judgment, right? When you are called to your judgment by him, then, hey, you won't be ashamed of anything. You say, hey, Lord, I try my best, right? Hey, I rightly divided the word of truth. What else can you ask me to do? Right? And he'll say, he's well pleased with you. But anyway, Deuteronomy 28 is so important. First of all, we know the book of Deuteronomy. If you did not know the context of the book of Deuteronomy, it is the last speech that Moses gave to all the Israelites, all right, before he died. So in Deuteronomy 1:1, it says, these be the words which Moses spake unto all Israel on this side Jordan in the wilderness. And then it goes specifically of where he was on the east side of Jordan. But the point is, this is the last speech that Moses gave before he died. All right, all the book of Deuteronomy. All right, and the whole book of Deuteronomy, if you were to read it all at once, it'd be like 3-4 hours. Right, it's like a 3-4 hour speech that Moses gave. All right, Deuteronomy 28. In verse 15, we already read the blessings. Go back and watch that class if you have not. Deuteronomy 28 verse 15, it says, but it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, because most of the book of Deuteronomy is a retelling of the law that he gave in Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. All right. Deuteronomy is just like a summary of the rest of the law. All right. So he said, look, if you don't observe to keep all the commandments of God, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee, right? If you don't keep the commandments, you Israelites who made the covenant with God, if you don't keep his commandments, then all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. And the thing about these curses, in verse 46, I'm really only going to get to, I want to get through all the first half of these, which I would say is like through verse 44 this week. And then next week, we'll come in and finish out with verses 45 through 68. But the thing about these curses, I'll jump around here to get to this point where it says, and they, meaning the curses, shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. Right? So these curses would be upon the seed of the Israelites forever. And they would be a sign and a wonder, meaning this is how you know who the Israelites are, is these curses. Because they're on the Israelites generation after generation after generation, right? Generational curses. They're on the Israelites forever, all right? Because you have, the reason why I have to point that out is because I've heard so many times whenever Israelites read, specifically verse 68, which we'll get to next week, spoilers, it's about slave ships, right? Whenever you bring this out to people in Christianity who think they know the Bible, well, they say, well, that was fulfilled in 70 AD when some Israelites went into Egypt on slave ships, right? But how does that apply to any other time throughout history? Because the curses happen over and over forever, as we just read. The curses don't happen just once. Not one of these curses only happened once. They happen generation after generation after generation forever. All right? Judgment, and Gad likes to read this verse all the time in 2 Ezra. Judgment is like a ring. It comes back around, and it comes back around, and it comes back around. All right? That's what judgment is like. That's what these curses are like. They're upon the seed of the Israelites forever. All right? And the reason why I'm stressing Israelites here is because these curses did not fall upon everyone. Understand that. These curses aren't on everybody. All right. In Amos 3, starting in verse 1, it says, "Hear this word that the Lord has spoken against you, O children of Israel, against the whole family which I brought up from the land of Egypt, saying, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore, I will punish you for all your iniquities." Right? So God only chose the Israelites, the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And therefore, only the Israelites made a covenant with God specifically. So God punished the Israelites more harshly and more immediately than any other people. All right? So these curses that you read in Deuteronomy 28, they don't apply to everyone. Therefore, as verse 46 says, they will be a sign. All right? They will be a sign upon the Israelites, so the Israelites can remember who they are. So the Israelites can recognize what condition they're in and why. All right? That's the importance, the significance of the curses. One more scripture on that, then we'll actually get into them. In Psalms 147 and verse 19, starting with 19. All right? Psalm 147 and verse 19, it says, "He," meaning the Lord, "showeth his word unto Jacob, his statutes and his judgments unto Israel." Right? So his word, meaning the Bible, his statutes, meaning his specific laws, and his judgments, the penalties for breaking those laws, unto Israel. "He hath not dealt so with any nation." Right? So no other nation has gone through the curses the way that the Israelites have. All right? "And as for his judgments, they have not known them." As for the punishments for breaking the laws, as for the curses, as for the plagues like we read last week, they have not known them. The other nations have not known what it's like to go through these things. All right? Praise ye the Lord. So David said all praises to the Most High for that thing, because the Lord is dealing with us in a special way. And you also read the scribes and the Maccabees talk about the same thing. All right? But let's get into it. These curses. Verse 16, it says, "Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field." Right? So on a very surface level, yes, this is talking about how cursed in the urban areas and cursed in the rural areas. Right? So it's talking about wherever you go, you're going to be cursed. But let's break it down. Let's get a little deeper. All right? So I think this is the one that we use on the flyer. Perhaps it's a different one. But check this out right here. I'm going to bring that down, kind of bring this in a little bit, just so y'all can see. All right? So when you think about the worst parts of the city, right, even urban these days, even though urban just means city, the term urban these days is like a dog whistle, is like a code word for black, right? Because when you think about urban areas, when you think about the inner cities, you think about the ghettos, right, that black people are in. Even the word ghetto means the Jewish quarter of the city, all right? And that's what you see. I think this is either Harlem, perhaps Bed-Stuy in New York, right? So that'd be cursed in the city and then cursed in the field, right? Most of the black people that are over here in this country were brought over here to pick cotton, right? And and some tobacco and whatnot. But what a lot of people don't realize and don't understand is that the so-called indigenous, so-called Native Americans were the first ones working in the field until they all died out of disease, all right? It's not all, obviously there's a remnant of the people still left, but the majority of the slaves were dying to disease. So the European slavers, they said, well, this ain't going to work. We're not making any profit. So let's go get them Jews in West Africa, right? So cursed shalt thou be in the city, cursed shalt thou be in the field. There's other images that I got on this. We can get out of that one. This is another cursed shalt thou be in the field. All right, as you see, a man working in the field. He's got a plow, working in the field. I don't know if y'all can see this, actually. Can y'all see this? Surely y'all can see this. Y'all should be able to see that. Y'all can see that, right? Yes, y'all can see that. Okay. There's another one, cursed shalt thou be in the field. Here's another one, cursed shalt thou be in the field. This is actually a big one. Okay, zoom out. Okay, so yeah, this is like a whole family. Right, cursed out in the field. Think you got the slave owner right there. Yes, slave owner as well. Where is that? That's at West Point, Mississippi. That's close to home. That was actually, I don't know if that was like slavery days or sharecropping days. Either way, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. So you got that. There's another one on here of modern day, because the people who work the field today, it ain't black people anymore. All right, it's Latinos who come up here and work in the fields, work for the crops. Let's see, work in the crops, pick the crops. I think I got one on here, surely, because I've used one before, as far as like for the flyers. But I didn't see it because I was going through these images earlier. I'll just try to find it real quick. If I can't find it, I'll go on to something else. But I was pretty sure that I had one of so-called Latinos working in the field as well. But I mean, you can look, even if I don't find it, you can look that up on Google. I mean, like you can just look up who works in the American fields picking strawberries and whatnot, picking all the American crops, the beans and all that kind of stuff. It's so-called Mexicans mostly, somewhat a little bit of Guatemalans as well. So that'd be like Iscar and Zebulon. Oh yeah. Here we go. IJP workers. There you go. Look who work in the field. All right. So-called Latinos. Used to be. The crazy thing is because originally it was the Native Americans, right? It'd be Gad and Reuben, and then Esau said, "Well, these ain't really working out the way that we'd hope. Let's go get the West Africans, make them slaves, Southern Kingdom." And then after the Emancipation Proclamation, they said, "Well, we still need people to work the fields. Where are we going? Oh, we're going back to the Northern Kingdom." Crazy how that worked. But again. Working in the field. So that's cursed in the field. Cursed in the field. Here's another one of cursed in the city, because I wasn't really focusing on cursed in the city there. But as you can see, in Africa, you got slums. In Haiti, you got slums. In Mexico, you got barrios. And the U.S. reservations are no different. All right, it's all ghettos. That's all it is. All right, all over the world. And these curses, whenever we go into every nation to preach the gospel, because there are Israelites in every nation, notice, obviously, looking at me, you can tell this is not a black thing. This is not a white thing. This is not a brown thing. All right? This is an Israelite thing. There are Israelites in every nation. And as we go into every nation, these curses and the punishments and plagues of Leviticus 26 is how we're going to identify where the Israelites are at, because they're going to look all sorts of different ways. All right. So I'll come back to that. But anyway, also, as far as cursed shalt thou be in the field, in Matthew 13, the book of Matthew 13, here it is in the most broad sense. All right, in the most broad sense of the word field. Matthew 13 and verse 38. I believe what it says. Yeah. So it says, the field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. Right? So in the broadest sense of the word field there, cursed shalt thou be in the field is the world. And even like when you go to a job fair, you apply for a job, they say, what field do you want to go into? Right? Showing that it is still captivity, even up to this day. But yeah, let's go back. Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. All right. So from there, let's get cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. All right. Because in ancient times, when it's talking about basket and store, obviously basket is what you hold on you. The store would be the storehouse or like a barn. All right. These days, we don't necessarily carry baskets with us everywhere. What do we carry? We carry like a wallet. All right. We don't have like storehouse anymore. What do we have? We have like bank accounts, right? That's where we keep our funds. That's where we keep everything, right? In Haggai 1, thy curse shall be thy basket and thy store. All right. So starting with verse 5 here in Haggai 1, it says, now therefore, thus saith the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. All right. So that's what the whole Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter is about. It talks about, hey, if you keep the commandments, Here's all the blessings. If you break his commandments, here's all the curses. All right? Consider your ways. Notice what you're doing. All right? God has set before us life and death. All right? That's what Deuteronomy 30 says. So consider your ways. Are you doing the ways that bring life, or are you doing the ways that bring death? Are you doing the ways that bring blessing, or the ways that bring cursing? All right? Verse 6. Ye have sown much and bring in little. Ye eat, but ye have not enough. Ye drink, but ye are not filled with drink. Ye clothe you, but there is none warm. And he that earneth wages to put it into a bag with holes, right? Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. What you have on you, because you're either racing to spend it, or it's going straight to somewhere else, like bills, right? And cursed is your bank account, because a lot of us have that automatic withdrawal. It is quite literally like putting it into a bag with holes, right? Because you put it in there and then it's gone, right? All right. Like a bag with holes. All right. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body. So cursed are your children, and the fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind, and the flocks of thy sheep. All right. So this is literally talking about the land, right? The land would not yield what it should for us, right? But also, I mean, just bring it on up to today. Who is really dominating the agriculture of the world as far as like the food production in the world? It's not so-called blacks, Latinos, and American Indians, I can tell you that much. It's mainly America, and the richest of the rich in America. The people that work the farms are not the ones getting paid by the farm, getting paid by the goods that are being sold from the farm. Understand that thing. Even the farmers themselves are not the ones reaping the benefits. It's the people who sit at like Monsanto shareholders board, right? It's the Tyson, who people sit on the board and shareholders of like Tyson chicken, right? Like, so like those are the people that are benefiting from the increase of the kind, the flocks of the sheep, the fruit of the land, all right? It says, cursed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shalt thou be when thou goest out. When come in and go out, I don't necessarily want to, because I want to get this done in 2 weeks. So I'm kind of rushing through a few of them, not breaking each one down to the fullest. But like coming in, as in like returning from and going out to war, like that's what it's going into, right? Leading the people, coming in and going out, right? The Lord shall send upon thee cursing, vexation, and rebuke in all that thou set thine hand unto for to do, until thou be destroyed, and until thou perish quickly, because of the wickedness of thy doings, whereby thou hast forsaken me, right? So the Most High is reiterating, you will not prosper in your ways in wickedness, all right? So that is the life, the lot of an Israelite person. You cannot get ahead no matter what you've tried, because you've never tried keeping all of God's commandments. You've always tried doing your own thing. Oh, God knows my heart. God said, yeah, I know your heart. I know it's wicked. And I'm going to keep cursing you. I'm going to keep sending on you vexation and rebuke, because you ain't never did nothing that this Bible said to do. You ain't never read the Bible. You talking about, well, I know the Bible. I went to church. I know the 10 Commandments, blah, blah. You ain't know there's way more than 10 Commandments. All right? God said, look, I'm going to send on you cursing, vexation, and rebuke. Rebuke means correction. He said, I'm going to send on you this cursing and vexation, right, to be oppressed or annoyed for your correction. All right? Verse 21, the Lord shall make the pestilence cleave unto thee until he have consumed thee from off the land, whither thou goest to possess it, right? So that's exactly what happened to the so-called Native Americans. All right, so I got this article pulled up here called Smallpox and the Native Americans. So I'll also just start with the abstract. So this is actually, so it's just the abstract. All right, I'm not getting into the article itself. All right, it says, with the arrival of Europeans in the Western Hemisphere, Native American populations were exposed to new infectious diseases for which they lacked immunity, all right? Because, yes, it is apparent and it's obvious that European colonizers, they did kill a lot of the indigenous, right? That happened. That's just history. But mostly what happened, like 90 to 95% of all the deaths of the indigenous after the Europeans got over here was through disease. It like the colonizers did not even really understand what was going on initially. They just saw all the people were dying of disease. They didn't get it. Like they didn't know that they were causing it, and really they weren't causing it. It was the Most High who brought the disease, as we're reading here in the curses. All right, for which they lacked immunity. These communicable diseases, including smallpox and measles, devastated entire native populations. Right. So smallpox and measles are the two that it lists here. All right. It says, we focus on the effect, it said in this article, we focus on the effect of smallpox on the Native Americans from the 15th to the 19th centuries, right? So that'd be the 1400s through the 1800s. Among the new infectious diseases brought by the Europeans, smallpox is one of the most feared because of the high mortality rates in infected Native Americans, right? So more likely to kill you. That's what mortality rate means, or high mortality rate. This fear may have been well-founded because the Native Americans were victims of what was probably one of the earliest episodes of biological warfare. Fortunately, they were also major beneficiaries of early vaccines. Oh man, I ain't even gonna say that word. I almost said it, but YouTube likes to take your videos down if you say that word. All right. All right, it says, thus, the arrival of smallpox and the decline of the Native American populations are inexorably linked, as the history summarized here illustrates. All right, so it says, the arrival of smallpox and the decline of the native populations are linked. All right, just like what the scriptures say. It says, the Lord shall make the pestilence, meaning the disease, cleave unto thee until he have consumed thee from off the land whither thou go to possess it, right? So like, where are all the Native Americans now? Not anywhere on the land. You have to go specifically to reservations to find them over here in the east. Over in the west, they're more spread out over there, as far as like you can find them more easily over there, all right, in the west. But anyway, it says, the Lord shall smite thee with a consumption. All right, so what I do want to point out is smallpox. Let's look that up real quick, just for the symptoms. All right, because God is about to describe specifically the symptoms. All right. Yeah. So it says, he says here, the Lord shall smite thee with a consumption. So consumption in this context is a wasting. All right, a wasting disease, right? It wastes your lungs, as far as like you get to coughing, and it wastes your flesh, as in you like break out. All right, and notice he said he'll make the pestilence until he have consumed thee off the land. He said the Lord shall smite thee with a consumption, right? Also, consumption is an old-timey word for TB as well. Tuberculosis was one of those diseases brought over here as well. But it says consumption, which is a wasting disease, and with a fever. And with an inflammation, right? So inflammation would be that skin rashes, all right? And with an extreme burning, all right? So let's look at some of these. Symptoms, right? Symptoms. These might include flu-like symptoms such as fever. Is that not what the scripture said right here? It literally said fever. All right? Tiredness and muscle aches. Then flat spots appear on the body. They become blisters before they scab and fall off and leave scars. You see that right there. So that would go into your inflammation and even a bit of extreme burning and consumption. All right. So again, with measles, let's look at measles as well, because those are the two that's listed here. There were many others, like typhus is one that's not listed here. TB, like I said. So yeah, let's search Google for the measles. The symptoms of the measles, all right? It says they include cough, right? So that would be the consumption as far as like lung consumption, runny nose, inflamed eyes, sore throat, fever, and a red blotchy skin rash, all right? The sore throat would also be consumption. But yeah, again, use the exact same word that the scripture uses here, a fever, all right? And then the inflammation and extreme burning, that would be their skin rash, all right, the skin rash. All right, so we can get out of that. Let's go back. And with the sword, right? That's what the enemy brought, the military might. And with blasting, right? They brought guns as well, and blast you away. And with mildew, right? Eat up all your crops. And they shall pursue thee until thou perish, right? All these symptoms will come after you until you die. All right? As it says up here, off the land, whither we go to possess it. All right? And thy heaven that is over thy head shall be brass, and the earth that is under thee shall be iron. Right? So I'll go ahead and read 24 to get the surface level understanding of this. The heaven being brass and the earth being iron. The surface level understanding is here in verse 24. The Lord shall make the rain of thy land powder and dust. From heaven shall it come upon thee until thou be destroyed. Right? So those would be like the dust storms that you find out west. All right? So that's the surface level understanding of verse 23, right? The heaven not bringing the rain that it should, and the earth not bringing forth the crops that it should, as if they were metal, right? But go a little deeper, and this is talking about shackles, yokes of iron, and chains, all right? And there's plenty of that. We'll talk about it next week, because the scripture literally talks about like a yoke of iron. Right here, as you see, the yoke of iron on the man's neck right there. Here in this slave trade photo, or drawing rather, you got the shackles on the hands and feet. You also seen that among the indigenous. I got this here about the Amazonian, or rather the Amazon indigenous right here with the shackles. Let's see. Amistad. It was portrayed in movies as well. And Amistad, they got the shackles around the neck and whatnot. All right. But also even on up to today, like people were on Trump's case. I don't know about this term, probably this term as well. But the last term that he served as president, when they were putting kids in cages, literally had metal over their head and metal under their feet, putting them in cages. Right? That's the type of things that this is talking about. All right? Verse 25. The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thy enemies. Right? You'll be smitten down, be beaten down by your enemies, struck down by your enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them and flee 7 ways before them, and shall be removed into all kingdoms of the earth. Right? So, literally, again, surface level, talking about going to battle, losing the battle, running away, and being captured and sold, right? So we know that happened to the so-called indigenous. We know that happened to the so-called Africans. In some cases, mostly it was over there in West Africa. It was mostly the Arabs and the Africans selling Jews to Europeans. But that did happen in some cases, right? So we know that happened. But also, you look like the protests and the civil rights movement, right? They went out one way against them. Everybody was, united. Even because we think about it as a black thing. Again, that wasn't just a black thing. You had the American Indian movement at that time. You had the Brown Berets, which were so-called Mexicans. You had the Young Lords, which was Puerto Ricans and Dominicans mainly, right? So you had all these different groups trying to go out one way against oppressors, right? And then they ended up fleeing 7 ways, as in, when the oppressors shut it down, when the American government would shut it down, they sent the police, they sent the dogs. The people would run various different ways, but what would they also do? They would run into various religions as well. They would run back to Islam. They would run back to Christianity. They'd run back to secular movements. They'd run back to leftist movements, right? They would run back to a whole bunch of different things, right? 7 different ways. All right. And shall be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth. We'll talk about that more next week. I'll give you a hint. It does have to do with the slave ships. And thy carcass shall be meat unto all fowls of the air, and unto the beasts of the earth, and no man shall fray them away. And I was just talking about the dogs, and I talked about the dogs last week as well, the beasts of the earth, right? And it says, thy carcass shall be meat unto all the fowls of the air, right? So when they would hang people, when they would do the lynchings, they wouldn't bury them, they'd just leave them there for like the birds and the beasts, right? And no man shall fray them away, because they wasn't worried about protecting the corpse that they just hanged, all right? This is history. This is what literally happened. All right. Verse 27, the Lord will smite thee with the botch of Egypt, right? The African diseases, right? And with the hemorrhoids and with the scab and with the itch, whereof thou cannot be healed, right? So if you look into who is the most disease-ridden people, right? And we just went into the diseases that wiped out the indigenous, right? They weren't necessarily the African diseases, but like, for example, like sickle cell is still prevalent with so-called blacks here in America, right? It's not just the so-called blacks. It's anybody who has like West African descent, right? So that would be in so-called Puerto Ricans and so-called Cubans, so-called Dominicans as well, right? Anybody that is so-called Latino that has just a little bit of West African ancestry, there is a chance that you have sickle cell as well. So like the botch of Egypt, right? That is the African diseases, all right? Whereof you cannot be healed. There's no cure. The Lord shall smite thee with madness, meaning insanity, and blindness, and astonishment of heart. So when it says blindness here, understand. And I read Zechariah 11:5 last week about being smitten before your enemies. So I skipped over that. But Ephesians 4 and verse 18 about blindness. Or is this darkness? Let me see. I think it is blindness. Blindness of the heart, I think it says. Ephesians 4 and verse 18. Yeah. So Ephesians 4 and verse 18. I'll start with verse 17. This I say, therefore, and testify in the Lord, that ye henceforth walk not as other Gentiles walk, not as the other nations, in the vanity of their mind, right? So they walk in ways that they just think is all right? They just do whatever they want to do. They do as they see fit, all right? Having the understanding darkened. So they have the understanding darkened. Being alienated from the life of God through the ignorance that is in them, right? So God will not deal with them, the people that's in the world doing whatever they want to do, because of their ignorance, all right? Because of the blindness of their heart, all right? So in Deuteronomy 28, when it's talking about blindness here, it's not just talking about, like Ray Charles, Stevie Wonder type blindness. It's talking about blindness of the heart, right? It goes right alongside with madness, right? Being crazy and the astonishment of heart. Verse 29, and thou shalt grope at noonday, meaning in the middle of the day, as the blind grope in darkness, and thou shalt not prosper in thy ways, right? So he's making a comparison to the blind, but he's not talking about literal blindness, right? Groping at noonday, groping is like grabbing, right? So you're groping at noonday as the blind grope in darkness, right? So in the middle of the day, when it's bright and sunny outside, right? The light is out there, but you're still out here. Hey, let me try, Seventh-day Adventist. Let me try Jehovah's Witness. Let me try Mormon. Let me try Egyptology. Let me try Islam. Let me try, you're out here looking for these things when the light has been there the whole time. It's right here in the Bible. All right? It said, as the blind grope in darkness, right? At noonday, though, right? That's the middle of the day. That's daylight. I was trying to think just something about the day, but instead I'll just go to the light, all right? And Proverbs 6 and verse 23. And there's also one in Psalms 119 about the light. But Proverbs 6 and 23, it says, for the commandment is a lamp and the law is light, and reproofs of instruction are the way of life. All right, so the commandment is a lamp and the law is the light, right? It's been here the whole time. Everybody has a Bible. Most people have a family Bible with records in it and whatnot, all right? Everybody has a Bible. It's been here the whole time. It's noonday. It's high time that we awake out of sleep. But here we are still groping at noonday, trying all these different things as the blind grope in darkness. Where's the one about a light to my path? here in Psalms 119. Here we go. So this is Psalm 119 and verse 105. It says, "Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path." Right? So the word, that's the light. That's the light. And here we are, this whole time we still groping in darkness. All right? "And thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee." Right? So we've had people stand up, try to fight for us. Right? When you look at so-called African American community, you had MLK, you had Malcolm X, you had Marcus Garvey. Right? They tried to stand up. What ended up happening? They ended up being killed. Right? Marcus Garvey, I don't know exactly what about his death. He may have been diseased. But the point is, no man shall save thee. We're still in these conditions, right? Look at the so-called American Indians. We had Geronimo, all right? He tried to stand up and save us. Hey, it didn't work. We had Crazy Horse. He tried to save us. Hey, it didn't work. They ended up getting captured and killed as well, all right? Even among the so-called Latinos, you had Che Guevara. Tried to stand up and save us. Didn't work. He ended up being killed by CIA operatives, all right? Didn't work. All right? No man shall save thee. Why? Because none of those men stood on the word of God the way they should have. All right? Verse 30. It says, "Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build a house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and thou shalt not gather the grapes thereof." Okay, so if y'all haven't caught on to it by now, the curses of Deuteronomy 28 are about colonization, right? Colonialism and slavery. That's what it's about. Captivity, bondage. Those two things, right? So there are those two ways to look at these, all right? So as far as like betrothing a wife and another man lying with her, either way, either the colonizer comes and, you know, he kills you and forces himself on your wife, or, you know, the slaver comes and he turns your wife into a bed wench, right? Regardless. Building a house and thou shalt not dwell therein. Like in the colonizer way of or in the colonization way of looking at it is you just built your house, but now here come colonizers coming in and stealing the land. You got to flee from your house. You will not dwell therein, right? Or you can look at it in the slavery aspect of you built the big house, but now you got to stay in the shack, right? Thou shalt plant a vineyard and shalt not gather the grapes thereof. The same thing. You're either planting your vineyard and being driven from your land so that you cannot enjoy the fruit of the harvest, or you are the one planting the grapes but not enjoying the wine that comes from it, right? Because like being a slave to do so. "Thine ox shall be slain before thine eyes, and thou shalt not eat thereof." So that's what happened to the American buffalo. If you were unfamiliar, there's a decree from the U.S. Cavalry, right? It was a decree in the Army whenever the Indian Wars were still going on out west. Hey, wipe out all the buffalo, because these are the Sioux tribes. This is their main source of the main resource that they use in general for food, for clothing, for they would use the bones for different utensils and whatnot. Hey, if we wipe out all these buffalo, if we wipe out all these ox, as this verse say, then hey, they won't have nothing. And so that was the decree. And there's plenty of images. I'm surprised I didn't go try to find one. But there's plenty of images of just like people who served in the U.S. Army in the 1800s, just sitting on a giant pile of buffalo skins, just like a huge pile that they did not need to wipe out, but they did. All right, as a military tactic. Thine ox shall be slain before thine eyes, and thou shalt not eat thereof. Thine ass shall be violently taken away from before thy face, and shall not be restored to thee. Right? So that'd be that 40 acres and a mule that was promised to the so-called blacks and not only the so-called African Americans, but so-called West Indian blacks as well, that they fought against the Native Americans, right? The Buffalo Soldiers. They said, hey, look, you're going to get 40 acres and a mule. Never happened, right? They won all the wars against their brethren, the so-called indigenous, and then, hey, oh, whoops, my bad. We're just not going to give you that stuff that we promised you. Thy sheep shall be given to thy enemies, and thou shalt have none to rescue them, right? So all the llamas and alpacas from South America, do you think they actually reap any benefits? Do you think the indigenous reap any benefits from them? No, not at all. Not these days. All right, verse 32. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thy hand, right? So this is why I pulled up the 12 Years a Slave clip. And we're going to watch this real quick. And I probably will get a copyright strike, but, you know, it is what it is. Maybe they won't take the video down. They'll just, you know, just tell me that, you know, I'm watching this, which obviously I am.
You, sir. What captures your fancy? This lounge is very brawny, huh?
How much are the ones Platt and Eliza?
Yes. 1,000 for Platt. This is a nigger of considerable talent, I assure you. 700 for Eliza? My fairest price?
You would accept a note.
Of course.
So if y'all don't know, this isn't like fiction. All right, this isn't just made up. This is actually a real story. The guy over here, who is played by Chiwetel Ejiofor, I think is his name, he played a real guy named Solomon Platt. All right, this guy was a real person who was captured from up north as a free man and then sold into slavery in the South. All right, when you had free states and slave states, right? So you have this situation where Platt's being sold to this man, and he's also Benedict Cumberbatch here. He's buying Platt. He's buying Solomon Platt here, and also Eliza. But he's not wanting to buy the kids, right? So this is what she's saying here.
Do not divide my family. Do not take me unless you take my children.
Eliza, quiet!
You will have the most faithful slave in me, the most faithful slave that's ever lived, but I beg that you do not separate us. Please.
Stop it. I will give you something to cry about. Randolph, come forward. Come. Now, you see how fit this boy is. A ripe fruit. May I take your stick for a moment? Observe this, Randall. Jump, run. Very good. Higher. You see this? Very likely. He will grow into a fine beast. 600 for the boy. Fair and final.
Done.
Superb. A moment, please. Mr. Ford.
Please.
Eliza.
Which way is it going? You have no use for no one so young will bring you no profit.
No, I cannot sell the girl. Heaps and piles of money to be made from her. She's a beauty, one of the regular ones. None of them thick-lipped, bullet-headed, cotton-pecking niggers here.
Child,
Please.
for God's sake, you're not sentimental, at least.
My sentimentality extends the length of a coin. Now do you take this lot, Mr. Ford, or do you pass on the more?
Please.
I will take the ones Platt and Eliza.
Sold, Eliza.
So I don't know if y'all ever seen the movie, but I couldn't find the clip very easily after what happens after that, which is Platt and Eliza, they do get sold and go to Benedict Cumberbatch. And once they get there, she's just crying for weeks on end. And Platt says, "Why are you crying? There ain't nothing you can do about it. Hey, just stop crying," right? And she said, "Let me cry. Just let me cry." Right? So that's what it means right here when it says, "Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people. And thine eyes shall look and fail with them," and fail with longing for them all the day long. Right? You're going to be crying all day, and there's nothing you can do about it. All right? "And there shall be no might in thy hand." She couldn't stop that sale from happening. And notice, of course, that situation around Solomon Platt, I haven't read his book, but I don't know if that specific situation actually happened, but things like that happened all the time. All right, even if that specific situation was, fictionalized or dramatized or whatever, things like that happened all the time. All right, so that's one way of "thy sons and daughters shall be given unto another people." Again, we're talking about the indigenous over here as well. This is the Carlisle Indian School. This is the Carlisle Indian School. I want y'all to see this good, so I'll go ahead and make this bigger over here on this side. So this, and it says up here, circa 1890. So the Carlisle Indian School is not the only Indian school, all right? And the Indian school is, they had a saying back in the 1800s, kill the Indian, save the man, right? So whether it be they killed these children's parents, or whether it be, they just took them and kidnapped them from them. Okay, that's about where it ends. Regardless, all right, they would take these kids and take them to boarding schools, all right, and they would raise them up in American customs, all right, because they wanted to Americanize all the people. They realized they couldn't kill all of them, so they said, okay, we'll Americanize them instead, all right, and that's exactly what has happened today. If you go to reservations, if you meet so-called American Indians, they are just as American as everybody else, as in they're just as wicked as everybody else. They're just as worldly as everybody else. They don't keep to the old customs, and the few that do keep to the old customs, they keep to the Assyrian style, nature worship customs. They don't keep to the customs that's in the Bible. All right, very few, if any, even keep something similar to what the scriptures say. Even though that's what most of the people were doing, or at least most of the so-called Native Americans here in the continental U.S., that's what most of them were doing whenever people like James Adair came over here. All right, it had been corrupted slightly then, but nowhere to the extent that it is today. All right. So that's what it's talking about. Like, sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people. All right. Child Protective Services as well is a branch of that. All right. The fruit of thy land and all thy labors shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed always. All right. You'll never be able to get ahead. The fruit of thy land and all thy labors, right? So that even goes into the colonial taxes. If y'all never heard of colonial taxes, look them up. The World Bank. If y'all never heard of these things, look them up. I don't necessarily have time to go into all of them tonight because I'm trying to get down to verse 44. But any nation that was formerly colonized, the agreement they made with the colonizer to leave their land was that, okay, you're going to have to pay us back basically forever. All right? You're going to have to pay us back all the money we would have made off of you. Right? We already made a whole bunch of... Just imagine how evil and wicked that is. We've already made all this money off of your slave labor and your resources, but we would have made more. So you're going to have to pay us more if you want to be free. That's the deal that was made through Latin American countries, through Haiti, through all the Caribbean nations. That's the kind of deals that were made, all right, to get these so-called independence. All right, these nations like France and Britain and Spain only give these nations quote unquote independence because it looked better, and they didn't necessarily have to micromanage everything. All right, it was a better PR move. It was better for the optics. All right, but these people are only oppressed and crushed always. These so-called Latin American countries, Haiti, Caribbean nations. All right. So that and also this applies to, I'm talking as a person who lives in America, a person who lives in the West, also Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands and, parts of Africa and the Middle East as well. All right. Let's see. So that thou shalt be mad for the sight of thine eyes, which thou shalt see. Understand this. I'm going to get this here in Ecclesiastes. In the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 7, and verse 7. It says, surely oppression make a wise man mad, and a gift destroyeth the heart. All right, so if you're wise, you're going to see the oppression. And mad in this context and in a British context means crazy and also angry, right? That's how we get in America. We use mad for angry because when you get angry, you go crazy, right? So mad originally meant crazy. Now it means angry, all right? But surely oppression will make you mad. It will make you angry. It will make you go crazy. And that's what it says here in verse 34. So that thou shalt be mad for the sight of thine eyes, which thou shalt see, right? The oppression. Only being oppressed and crushed always. The Lord shall smite thee in the knees, the arthritis, And in thy legs with a sore botch that cannot be healed, right? There's no cure. From the sole of thy foot unto the top of thy head, right? The gout, for example, as it says, the sole of thy foot. Verse 36. The Lord shall bring thee and thy king, which thou shalt set over thee, unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, and there shalt thou serve other gods, wood and stone. Now, in Deuteronomy 28, wood and stone is repeated. All right? Wood and stone. If you look at the two major world religions, each have a couple billion. In each major world religion. It's Christianity, which is symbolized by a wooden cross, and Islam, which the Muslims, the real Muslims, say you ain't a real Muslim unless you made your pilgrimage, your Hajj to Mecca. All right, and in Mecca, why go to Mecca? Because in Mecca, there they had the Kaaba stone that they bow down to. All right, so that's your wood and stone, your Christianity and Islam, your wooden cross and your Kaaba stone. All right. I do just want to read this real quick in Jeremiah 2. I'm gonna kind of rush through these last two, or last few, I should say. And Jeremiah 2. Jeremiah 2, and starting with 11. Yeah, starting with 11. It says, "Hath a nation changed their gods, which are yet no gods?" Right, so first of all, has there ever even been a people that the Lord has dealt with like the Israelites, where a real God, like the only true God, has ever dealt with a people other than the Israelites? No, that's never happened. So first of all, to go from a real God to no gods, right, idols, wood and stone, which mean nothing, it's never happened, right? But also, have any of the nations who worship idols, have they ever changed their gods? No, Hinduism is still around, and it's been around forever. Because the majority, or rather I should say, the bulk of the people in India are not Israelites. All right, they're Ophirites. All right, they're children of Joktan. They're not the Israelites. Right? They still have their Hinduism. Right? Over in China, they still have Taoism and Buddhism to a certain extent. And in Japan, they still have Shintoism and again Buddhism to a certain extent. But yeah, you still have the Muslims, as far as the Arabs, they're still Islamic. Since that has come around, they've stuck to it. They have not changed their gods, right? Most of the white population are still in Christianity, right? They're still Catholic or they're still Protestant, right? They haven't changed their gods. Only the Israelites have changed to worship like Caesar Borgia, have changed to worship, Muhammad and the Kaaba stone and Islam, have changed become Egyptologists, right, have changed their gods. Only the Israelites. He said, but my people have changed their glory for that which doth not profit. All these religions are not going to profit the Israelites. The only thing that's going to profit the Israelites is coming back to the word of God that's in the Bible. That's it. Coming out of what Christianity has taught you about the Bible, what Islam has taught you about what the word of God is supposed to be, and just doing what the Bible says. It said, be astonished, O ye heavens, at this, and be horribly afraid. Be ye very desolate, saith the Lord. For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, right? We forsook our real God and hewed them out cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water, right? And instead they worship, white Jesus on a cross and, Islam, which is no profit. All right, broken cisterns. 14, it says, is Israel a servant? Is he a homeborn slave? Why is he spoiled, right? A homeborn slave. That's what Deuteronomy 28 is talking about. It's talking about becoming slaves. All right? Verse 37. It says, and thou, meaning you, shall become an astonishment, a proverb and a byword among all nations which the Lord shall lead thee. First of all, an astonishment, because the other nations look at the Israelites and they're like, what is wrong with his people? Why haven't they returned to their God yet? The other nations know. Like, they know all this that I'm bringing out to you. All right? They know that the so-called black people and Latino people are chosen. They know that so-called Native Indians were actually Israelites the whole time. Like, they know this. But they're not going to tell you because they're making money off of you right now by you not being with God, right? They make big money on them Sabbath day sales. All right? But they're still astonished. Like, really? They ain't woke up yet? They ain't found it out yet? They're still out here messing around with Christianity and Islam? Like, what's going on? A proverb. A proverb is the stereotypes, the phrases that they come up with, all right? Like colored people time. They come up with, like black people like fried chicken and watermelon, all that kind of stuff. Puerto Ricans carry knives. Mexicans are lazy. Like all these like stereotypes that they come up with. A byword. A byword is anything that is not your real name, right? Calling you anything that is not your real name, right? So that goes into all the racial slurs, right, that they have for black and brown people. But also just saying black, like that's not what God called you, right? African American, that's not what God called you. Mexican, that's not what God called you, all right? American, native, indigenous, like all these things. Latino, that's not what God has called us. Hispanic means property of Spain, or it really means of Spain, but property of Spain is where you because the Aztecs and the Toltecs, they weren't calling themselves Hispanic. The Tainos, the Boricua, they were never calling themselves Hispanic or Latino. But since Spain come over and whooped everybody in the behind, they say, okay, now you're of Spain, now you're Hispanic. All right? That's a byword. That's not what God has called us at all. Among all nations, whither the Lord shall lead thee. Right? So every other nation has their racial slurs and their bywords that they call the Israelites by. All right? Even the Africans call the so-called African Americans, they call them racial slurs as well. Call them katas, which means cotton picker. All right? They have, every other nation has racial slurs for the Israelites. All right? Byword. It says, thou shalt carry much seed out into the field and shalt gather but little in, for the locust shall consume it. Now I was going to get into a whole breakdown about the locusts, the same ones that you find in Revelation 9. These locusts, though, it's deeper. Obviously, there's the surface level of literal locusts that God would send upon our crops while we were still in the land of Israel. But there's also the locusts of the colonizers were also called locusts in Revelation 9. All right. Thou shalt plant vineyards and dress them, but shalt neither drink the wine nor gather the grapes, for the worm shall eat them. Thou shalt have olive trees throughout all thy coasts. And again, I'm kind of speeding through this, jumping over this, but this olive trees, it does go pretty deep as well. But thou shalt not anoint thyself with oil, for thine olive shall cast his fruit. Verse 41 goes into, let me, before I even get to verse 41. But 41 is just making reference to the same thing that we saw in the video a while ago and, what we read in verse 32. But I was reading this earlier, actually, in Micah chapter 6. And usually I don't go to the things that I read in my personal lessons. I feel like that's kind of cheating. But this was so apt that I had to just go here. Micah 6, as I was reading it, I was like, dang, this is saying the same thing as Deuteronomy 28. That's what you'll see with the prophets, really, is like you'll see that they're just reiterating the law most of the time and saying, hey, you haven't been following the law, here's what's going to happen to you. In Micah 6, starting with verse 12, for the rich men thereof are full of violence, right? So he's talking about the wickedness of Israel. He's talking about the wickedness that's in the land of Israel. Because Micah was a contemporary of Isaiah. Isaiah was before any captivity. He lived during the time period of the kings. All right? And the inhabitants thereof have spoken lies, and their tongue is deceitful in their mouth, saying, hey, look, the people been wicked. Therefore also will I make thee sick in smiting thee, in making thee desolate because of thy sins. You see that right there? So he said, I will make thee sick. That's what we were just reading about, what happened to the so-called Native Americans, right? The smallpox and the measles. In Deuteronomy 28:21, he said, the pestilence going to come and drive you off the land, right? It says, thou shalt eat, but not be satisfied. And thy casting down shall be in the midst of thee, and thou shalt take hold, but shalt not deliver. And that which thou deliverest will I give up to the sword. You see that right there? So God said, hey, you cannot run from these judgments. These judgments are going to follow you no matter where you go, and no matter what you do. All right? Verse 15. Thou shalt sow, but thou shalt not reap. Thou shalt tread the olives, but thou shalt not anoint thee with oil and sweet wine, but shalt not drink wine. Again, going into the same thing that we read earlier about the different colonization aspects of it and the slavery aspects of it, right? So that's what it's going into here. Verse 41, thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity, right? So that's what we were watching with the 12 years of slave clip. All right, the children went into captivity. You were not able to enjoy them. Why? Because you got split up. You got sent over here. They got sent over there. All right. Verse 42. All thy trees and the fruit of thy land shall the locust consume. Again, surface level, literal locust. Deeper level, the locust is in Revelation 9. Verse 43. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. You see that right there? So you have, like, take the black community, for example. You have people that are like Chinese and Indians from India and like Arabs. They come in and they open up businesses. Koreans as well. They come in, they open up businesses, and those businesses thrive in the black communities. Yet there's not very many black-owned businesses, right? So that's just an example of how this works. And then when you go to Latin American countries, it's the same, but on a national scale. When you go to Haiti, it's the same, but on a national scale. All right? Where you have foreigners come in and they make big money off the people, yet the people stay in oppression and poverty. All right, like the richest man in Mexico is like Lebanese. The richest man in Haiti is Jewish. Like, that's how it works in those countries. All right? The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. So again, here in America, there's no black-owned banks. Yet, black people are the ones not even getting bank loans. They get like payday loans. You know what I'm saying? Like the worst kind of loans, the predatory loans that you can get, right? And again, go to the countries that are like Latin America and the Caribbean countries, and that's where you get the World Bank type stuff. Look into the World Bank, all right? Because they will offer these predatory loans, but again, on a national level. This is a documentary called The End of Poverty. Check it out. It talks about how if the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund ceased to exist, then poverty would end around the world. The only reason why these, what Trump would call, forget my language, but this is your president who said this, what Trump would call shithole countries, those countries are only like that because of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Check it out. It's a documentary called The End of Poverty. I'm pretty sure it's free on YouTube. So check it out. All right.